Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Thick No More. This is a really, really special podcast for me. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most for quite some time now. I was a little bit cheeky. I reached out to this amazing person on Instagram and said, hey, listen, I don't suppose by any chance you'd be prepared to hop on my podcast and just tell everybody what you do so well on Instagram. Um, and she kindly said, yeah. So I'm the luckiest person, and we are the luckiest people in the world. So we constantly try and break labels on this podcast. We've all been called names in the past, and I'm trying to change that conversation around conversations about ADHD, autism, dyslexia, neurodiversity, and trying to say, look, it was never our weakness. So today's guest has spent her lifetime helping people find their voice. Most of the people will know her, I guess, best love for television presenting, such as programs such as things like Fame Academy, Pop Idol, countless TV productions. But what really caught my eye over the last few years, the last decade, I think Carrie has become something even more important, I guess, a powerful advocate for all of us neurodivergent people and all the families out there. So many strings to her bow, an author, a speaker, what else have we got? A leadership coach, a campaigner, of course, an MBE. So, Carrie Grant, thank you so much for joining us on Thick No More. I am so, so proud to have you.
Oh, Jay, thank you for having me. And it's great to be here.
No, it's good. So, listen, I hope you remember when we first spoke. I start the same question. I ask everyone the same question. It should be good for you, to be fair. Um, so just for today only, I have this ability to make music. Every time a door opens for you, you're going to have a tune that plays every time that door flings open. Tell us what the song is and why.
So, I think this is really difficult. I think we could do the entire podcast just about one song, right? For me, my entire life has been music, starting with dancing to it, then singing to it, then coaching it. And so, and making records and being around people making records. So I think it's a very hard ask. And I think I would probably have a different tune on every door. But seeing as you're making me have to be you're asking me to write within the lines, Jay. This is not good.
You've got to go right down here. Listen, and I tell you, people have actually messaged me and say this has started happening now. When I open the door, I start humming a tune in my head. So be prepared.
It's going to end up an earworm, isn't it? I'm going to absolutely hate it. Okay. So my song is Be Optimistic. It's optimistic.
Okay. That's I kind of get that.
By the Sons of Blackness.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Listen, it's already singing here. Have I got to pay for this, by the way?
Your head in the sky.
Every time I see a post from you on Instagram, that's the feeling I always get from you. You can be talking about, and I do it myself, we talk about stuff, the pair of us and all of our community, all the problems that we're seeing at the moment. But the thing you always leave people with on your posts is that optimism that, okay, listen, we'll get there. We'll get there, So I think that's a good tune for you.
Can't stop us, send parents. We're the best, right?
Yeah.
So I think that
totally.
for me, hope is such a big thing for me, but hope is earned. You can't just be gifted hope. Hope is not something,
No.
I mean, some people are born hopeful, right? So I guess that could be true. But I think that real hope with depth comes from having walked some really deep valleys and making choices in the darkest, most difficult spaces to keep believing, to keep hoping, to keep thinking there must be better than this. Come on, we need to fight for better.
Totally.
So that's with everything I do, that's always the aim, is how do we, even in those, and I'm talking about dark times, just holding on, even if it's the one tiny cell, there's still a cell of hope happening.
Yeah, no, totally. And you're right. You have to those paths that we all go on, at times they can really test you. And you do have to have that tiny bit of light at the end of the tunnel just to claw onto, because it does. I'm not saying it gets what's the word I'm looking for in my dyslexic brain? It's not easier. It's never really easier, but it just kind of, you find a way, right? You find a way of managing, and then like you speak to people like yourselves and all the people that I speak to, you come across people and you realize, actually, I'm not on this journey on my own. There are hundreds of thousands of us and we're all on that same path. So you're dead right. Hope is a really important word. I think one of the things, like, for me, obviously when I reached out to you, I'll be honest, hands in the air, I didn't even expect you to answer. So, and I thought, if I do get an answer, it'd probably be from one of these agencies going, "Hey, Carrie's really busy right now, but drop us a line." And then, so I thought, well, and when you replied, I thought, oh my God, and I didn't know what to say after that. So look, I know who you are, right? I've seen you on telly. I've seen all your Instagrams, and millions of people know you are. Let's be honest. But I guess question I really love to ask you is, when the cameras are off,
Mm.
gone now, when the TV camera's off, who are you when they're switched off behind
Yeah,
those doors? Tell us
I
about
think.
Carrie.
Do you know what? I think I was really fortunate in that, I left school at 15, back in the early 80s. And for much of my career, it was under the radar. I worked and worked. I never not worked. I was a dancer, then a singer, working with lots of artists and stuff. But the point at which the public became really aware of me was during Fame Academy. And it was a reality
Yeah,
television show. And not only was it a reality television show, you could press the red button and you could watch me coaching people and talking to people like for 8 hours straight. So
yeah,
I think I was really fortunate that in a way I didn't come into the industry, or I didn't come into the public's awareness as like, I'm not a star up there on a pedestal that, has this kind of other, as it were. I feel
right,
like I came into the industry. Everyone knew what I was like. I was like, I love my students and I'll fight for them and I'll tell them off. And I'll,
yeah,
just like being real, and believing in my students. And when they felt disappointed with their performance, I did too. So you
yeah,
saw the real thing. You saw like, and when for me, because I was a judge as well as a coach on Fame Academy, for me, it was always important to be coach, but also when you're a judge, it's not about deconstructing a person. It's always been
mm,
about what can I say that is going to help you next week to get better at what you do. And so I think in a way, even though I was kind of seen as quite a hard judge, I was seen as someone who was reliable, in probably
yeah,
similar to Len Goodman in Strictly in that way. Like I knew the technique and I wasn't just playing for the laughs or the bad stuff, but actually
yeah,
really giving you good critique so that you could go away and learn something. So for me, who am I? I'm that person that will fight for other people. That's my autism, that need for justice, particularly when I see other people in pain. Oh my gosh, I feel it so strongly. And I think that for many years, I felt like you're not allowed to be like that. That's not allowed. It's like the Think No More thing really relates because it's like you're not allowed to be something that is essentially you. And then when you find out autistic trait, there is a part of you that wants, well, I want to work against it then, rather than leaning into it. Now I'm
just
just like, I lean into it. Yeah. I want justice
wow,
for people. I want to see
good.
fair.
Oh, that comes across as well.
I want to see people not othered. Like, who wouldn't want that? That seems mad to
No,
want something else. Um,
yeah,
so that's me. The me outside of the camera is, I think I have two modes really, and I think through an autism lens we might call them masking, but I don't. For me, they're not masking. Which is, I'm really enthusiastic about life. I love people. I love friends. Right now in my house, because it's a sunny day, people are arriving to sit in the garden, and the house will just be. It's like a community centre. I love it. 7 o'clock tonight, if people haven't gone, I will go out into the garden and go, night, guys, I'm off to bed. And then I just leave. And then I'm on my own and I need my
yeah,
space
your
and I need
time.
to
Yeah,
recharge. Yeah. So I'm kind of either or. So I can be very, very quiet, bookish, doing tapestries and watching true crime and being my best autistic self. Or I'm
amazing.
or deeply social. I'm kind of both of those
Yeah.
things at the same time.
And you talked about leaving school in the 80s. I mean, I'm a 70s kid. I left school in 88, I think. I can't remember,
Yeah.
85, I don't know. But for me, school was horrific. I mean, I told you my story when I reached out to you. What was school like for you? What were school years like for you?
Well, it's so interesting because before I got my autism my autism diagnosis was 2 years ago, and
Yeah,
or 2.5 now. And I think with that diagnosis, I began to look back at those school years, and suddenly they made sense. The things that didn't make sense. So at school, I was quite bright. I was
yeah,
always the top stream, but I think I'm quite a slow learner. And I think that's to do with how I learn long-term memory, everything to long-term. So it takes longer. I watch David, my husband, who is properly ADHD, and David will just look at something and know it. And you think,
yeah,
how do you just know that so quickly?
yeah.
But then if you ask him in 10 minutes, he hasn't got a clue what
Yeah,
it
because
says.
something distracted, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Unless it's like the
Perfect scenario.
Unless it's like football and cricket scores from the 1970s, in which case he'll still be able to tell you all of them. But and music stuff, because he's interested in those things, but stuff that's not needed, he's got like a perfect editing suite in his head that just gets rid of that stuff. Whereas for me, I'm a little bit slower. And now I think, wow, as an autistic person, what I see, this is not a scientific fact, is not based on research. This is just my observations of the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with and lived with in the last, you know, 60 years. Is that it feels to me that the education system is obviously set up for neurotypicals. We know that. So at 21, their education is done.
Yeah.
And then why is that echoing like that? Are you getting that echo? No.
No, no,
Okay.
no, no.
So at 21, a neurotypical person's education is done. It's finished, and it seems like from then there on, they just go and get a job and live their best life. It feels that with neurodivergent people, our learning arc is a lot longer. So
Yeah.
I
It's
went back
continual.
yeah. At
Yeah.
56, I signed up to do a master's in theology, and I hadn't studied since I was 15. And I loved it. And I moaned the whole way through. It was like, I can't do it. This is too hard. Everyone's academic. I don't feel academic enough. And then I aced it. So how did that happen? How this trajectory of neurodivergent people, I think that I notice this a lot. We're constantly looking forward to developing. We all want to move on to get more out of life. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying other people don't, but it's just something I have particularly noticed with neurodivergent people. So for me, the education system at school, friendships were really problematic. I had a
Mm.
lot
The
going on.
clues were there. The
Yeah,
clues were there.
there. But
Yeah.
then I had a lot of trauma going on at home. And I think that a
Yeah.
lot of the trauma that I went through as a child just got everything that happened at school just got put into that little box of family
Yeah.
trauma. And so
That's what did it.
in
Yeah.
today's world, that would be social, emotional, mental health pathway rather than an special educational needs and disability pathway, a SEND pathway.
Yeah.
Um, but mainly, I remember things like in my secondary school, the head of year arranged for it that I could have the gym, the school hall, the hall during lunch hour, so that I could dance. And so I
Wow.
was on my own. I'd go and have my lunch, and then I'd be on my own dancing for an hour. And I think, why did I ask for that? I clearly wanted to be on my own and needed to be on my own. But that they would have made that kind of reasonable adjustment back in what would have been the late 70s was really extraordinary.
Crazy.
They gave me
That
that.
is.
And
That's quite remarkable, really. Does someone have kind of, I guess, belief in you way
yeah,
back then? Now we talk about accessibility, adjustments, inclusion, all of those good things that we need. But back then, just didn't exist, right?
it
So for someone to kind of see that glimmer, maybe,
feel like there was more time for more relational teachers, even though it was sit down, shut up in many ways. I feel like there were teachers that really believed in you, and all the subjects where the teacher believed in me, I aced. All the subjects where the teacher was horrible, I hated and didn't do well in. So this tells me something about how important the relationships are between teachers and students. If a child
Massive.
knows they're believed in, then it makes them, certainly I do, it makes me want to push harder and aim higher, just so that the teacher will then go, yeah, you did even better, keep going. I really respond to encouragement.
Yeah, and I was reading an article on Substack at the weekend, and it's come from Australia, and it's written by a lady who's had some involvement in the mastery schools over there, and this, that, and the other. And she was kind of explaining about getting away from saying to children, students, and young adults, really, it's the belief matter. It's instead of sort of going, oh, listen, we shouldn't do it like that. We should do it like this, or no, that's incorrect. That's wrong. It's how's it going today? How are you feeling today? How did you feel about that? How was that for you? Just the difference in that mentally when you leave that environment, because
You're
you
so,
hold on to it. I mean, as an ADHD and a dyslexic, you hold on to every single word
you
that
do.
that that you know,
But if
and
you have that, how do you feel today and what's going on for you? This is speaking straight into our critical thinking, which
yeah,
is so important in today's world, that we have critical thinking, that we can look at something and think, do I agree with this? What do I feel about this? What do I need to act on this? Do I need to push it out of my way? That critical thinking, I think our children are not taught to think critically.
no,
We're taught just to like
no,
line up. I feel like we talk about the 60s and 70s like they were really awful, but I feel like, oh, I feel like there were lots of individual quirky people in my class. They were
yeah, I
they
agree.
they
I
were there.
agree, and I've I think I've done the same as what you've done. Like I've reflected this whole podcasting over the last 2 and a bit years has made me kind of like reflect back, and I've kind of tried to look at the classroom when I was in the classroom, and I can visualize other children now that were going through the same thing I was going through. Because now I remember it, but I realized I just parked it, hidden it, and locked it away because
Yeah.
I guess that was my safe place to be.
Yeah.
So you do realize that, and yeah, I agree with you. And I think the ability in the 70s and 80s, being able to play outside, fresh air, sports,
Oh,
all the
just
things you see on TV when they do the 80s TV shows like Stranger Things and this, that, and you see them as a group of kids together. Those things were important, and I think we lose that a bit as well.
yeah, I think you're right. I think also it so depends, like I said, on what's going on in your home life. I think
Yeah,
because home life was so unstable, school to me was like a haven. It felt like this feels really secure and very holding. And it felt like the teachers, certainly in my infant and junior school, felt very holding. They were a bit like an extra parent, which I
yeah.
definitely needed at that point.
I think we'll come back to teachers and schools definitely because I want to get your thoughts on that a bit later on, but because it's important, I think, for both of us to dig a bit deeper into our thoughts on the education settings and yeah, well, I'll come back to that. I've parked that one up there. So was music and dance your safe place then? You say
Yeah.
about an
Yes,
hour,
yes,
yeah,
yes. I mean, from 2.5, my mum sent me to dance lessons at 2.5. And I just remember the pianist would start playing the piano, and I just wanted to do ballet and jump and hop and run around the room. And I loved improvisation. So that was, they'd put on a piece of music and they'd just say dance. And everyone would just get up and dance and do their own thing. And I loved it. I just loved it. Music for me was salvation. It was the thing that kept me positive. It was the thing that spoke into my soul, my very soul. Even now, if I listen to music, it touches me in such a deep way. And
yeah,
I think very early on, that probably turned into, what about a career as this? Because I was like the singing, dancing kid that, my mum dragged me out at every family party to sing, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I loved nothing more than to be doing that. So at 15,
15.
I left school
Left school.
and I auditioned for
And
Top
I
of the
auditioned.
Pops, and I became a dancer on Top of the Pops. And that was my first
It's
job
incredible.
out of school. And then I got my first record deal that same year. And then the second year out of school, when I was 17, I was signed to a different label and did Eurovision. And then from there, I was a TV presenter. So, like, by the time I was 18, I'd done singing, dancing, presenting,
Yeah,
made records, been in all the newspapers, represented my country. And I think all of those things were just wonderful, but those were then career things, and they weren't
I know.
the kind of the raw material of singing and dancing. That bit, I think I had to rediscover a little bit later. Just the
Yeah,
joy of listening to a piece of music or playing a piece of music just because, not because someone was paying me or not because it was a career move, but just because that's what we do. Singers sing, dancers
yeah.
dance.
I went back to my mum's, I don't know, the beginning of this year, and she's got one of those old massive trunks full of photos and school reports, and I was frantically trying to find some pictures that I know exist somewhere. So music has always been a big thing for me. I mean, I have the lyrics to Depeche Mode on my arm, in a tattoo, and
Lovely.
Adam and the Ants was always my thing. And I clearly,
Oh,
yeah,
we were
genuinely,
talking about Adam and the Ants just before I came onto this podcast.
no.
David Scott.
I used to dress up and put the
Yeah.
white paint across my nose, and that was my get out. But you can read, like you were just saying about David. You could read a paragraph to me now, 50 words, and I'd remember two of those words. But if you played a track to me and said, oh, this is a tune from, I don't know, Tina Turner, have a listen to this. I'd pick all those words out and I'd remember all those words. And you could ask me it 10 weeks later and I could say, oh, yeah, I remember that. There's a bit in there about this. But it's funny, music just has this thing that holds on you and can take you anywhere you want, can't it?
We love the neurodivergent brain for just going, sorry, not interested in that. Now that interests me.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
Editing system that just decides on the moment what it wants to keep hold of and what it's not interested in. I mean, that's of all the stuff we talk about that, that certainly ADHD people have, of like, what do they call it now? Where you can't make up your mind or you're just procrastination. All the stuff
Yeah,
about
procrastination.
procrastination. And yet there's so many bits of the ADHD brain that are just yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Well, I had I tell this story often, but I had a gentleman on here, and he won't mind me telling this because he told the story himself. But he went on to do great things. So he set a Guinness World Record for the most uh, triathlons in so many days. I think he did 70 in 75 days. But he was telling me prior to that he'd had like 60 odd jobs in, like, I don't know, 6 months, because he just did something and thought, yeah, I like this. No, I don't like this anymore. Yep, but this is for me. No, this isn't for me anymore. And it is just that. It's just instant. You can't, you try to explain to people, I'm with you now. I'm listening. I'm paying attention. It's gone. Forgotten what you said. It's crazy. Crazy
Yeah.
situation. So your autism, you mentioned, you were diagnosed a few years ago. Tell us a bit about that. Take us back to that moment. What made you decide to go forward and get the diagnosis, and what was it like? Tell us a bit about that.
I think for me, because 2 of my 4 children were diagnosed with autism, and
Yeah,
they this was during a time where they just been through hell, honestly. They're like all of us parents that have got children that are in the school system. We've all been through so much. We carry so much. And I have always felt like, well, I'm standing on the outside helping my neurodivergent children. And then bit by bit, I almost peer reviewed myself, like, hang on a minute.
see a
There's a
bit
lot
of that,
going on
isn't
there
it?
that's very similar to your children. Um,
Yeah,
and and I didn't need to be diagnosed. I could have just got undiagnosed. Like, I'm living my best
yeah,
life. But
yeah,
I felt that it was important for my children. I felt it was important that they know, actually, mum's just like us. And so there was that. There was also at the time, because David and I just written our book, A Very Modern Family. And I was
yeah,
saying a lot about autism. And I really hate this idea that, you're speaking about autism, but you're not autistic. Like, that's not the autistic voice. And then I'm thinking, now it's got to the point where it's really awkward because it is the autistic voice, but I just can't say that it is because I don't know. So
yeah,
those 2 things were probably my main reason, really, for my children first and then for the community second. What I didn't imagine was that it would have any effect on me. And it did. I then had to
yeah,
just, like many people that get diagnosed late, you then have to go back and just look at your entire life. all of the times where you were judged when you shouldn't have been judged, all the times where you were put down, all the times where you misunderstood something perhaps, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's not good. So all of that composite of positive and negative, you then kind of have a period of processing, I suppose, after you're
Mm.
diagnosed this. That for me lasted just a couple of months, but for some people that lasts a long while. I think I probably processed a lot whilst I wasn't diagnosed, just raising my
Yeah, yeah,
children.
yeah.
Um,
Did you
so,
did you replay loads of incidents in your mind as well? Did you kind of go back over stuff?
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes, 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 yes. Like so difficult looking at, I think particularly being judged. I think I've been very judged in my life and yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
So you
It
just
is, and it's not talked about enough, Carrie. You know that.
make
I don't
it
think we
difficult.
talk about all these things, but I don't think that aspect of, this whole podcast is about labels, right? And let's be honest, when you're given that diagnosis, or like me, you're dyslexic. I put a post on LinkedIn with a dyslexic tattoo across my head, right? Because that's kind of, you're given a label and you've been labeled prior to that. I was called thick, right? I don't think we talk enough about those replay moments afterwards because it can be really traumatic, really traumatic.
It really can, and especially where you're then having to forgive people that really said some not nice stuff.
Yeah,
That sucks, doesn't it? Um,
it,
and
it
so,
does.
yeah, I think that has been really difficult. But I think that more than anything, I think because I was diagnosed late, I don't see autism as a label that's difficult. For me, I'm fabulously autistic. My kids are fabulously autistic. So for me, it's a positive diagnosis. Um, I've been diagnosed non neurotypical, and I'm kind of glad about that. That works for me. That suits me fine. I think
Yeah,
there are difficulties and there are positives. A label is only a problem if you have a problem with the label. And unfortunately, the way that labels are given is that, like, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you are. Da-da.
yeah.
Like, why are
There's
you
your
sorry?
leaflet.
Like, why are you sorry? Here's a leaflet. Work yourself out. If you're lucky if you get a leaflet. So,
True. Yeah, this is
I
true.
think I think that for me, I don't. I think autism is amazing. I'm really excited to be autistic. Yes, it means I've had to square some really difficult stuff in my past where I've been misunderstood, where I didn't really understand what was going on as a child sometimes. I didn't understand contexts. I didn't understand why sometimes kids didn't want to play with me at school and stuff. And I think I put that down to being, I was the only child in my class of divorced parents. And, this is like today, it would mean nothing. But back in the early 70s, that was a really big deal. And so I think I put all of this down to just having a single mum, and having all this stuff going on at home, my dad being violent or whatever, or other people being violent with my mother. And so I felt like, oh, that's why I feel different. It must be because of that. And
Yeah,
then to find out actually it wasn't that. You were like trying your very hardest and people weren't being nice. People weren't being
no,
inclusive. People were
no.
being quite horrible. And it's interesting that even before my diagnosis, one of the most important kind of patterns of my life has been to be inclusive, to say, come round if nobody else wants to have you, come round our house. Let's
Yeah,
fill
you
the
just
house with
mentioned it earlier,
people.
right? You just mentioned
And
it
and to
earlier.
really build villages. That's one of the most exciting things to do in life for me, is building villages, to build communities, because these are the things that give you hope. These are the things that keep you alive when you're really in those darkest places, is your community. So, and I didn't really have that as a child massively, certainly not at school. So, so feeling like you're on the outside, that's hard. And I think that autism diagnosis kind of showed me, I see. I see. So even it was playing out even when you were little, that you
Yeah,
felt you were on the outside because you are feeling different to all those, the ideology of normal, because normal is an ideology, right? Someone somewhere
yeah,
in history
totally.
said, this is the absolute zenith of how
Yeah,
you're meant to be. And then we all just
yeah,
obediently said, Yes, that's the
Yeah,
zenith of how we're meant to be. Like, who said that? Can we just like,
totally.
uh,
And even you talked about education, even the whole education thing. You know, we're led to believe that this is the start point of education, this is the end point of education, and there's the straight linear line that you go on. That's the way it is, you know? And we
these
all just, yeah,
neurodivergent
correct. So
people,
wait,
this is our
you know, I
education.
know. I mean, if you could have drawn a straight line for mine, it would have been a miracle if you could have drawn a straight line for my education. I'll tell you that now, because it was nowhere near straight. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I have a question for you. Do you, what's your opinion on, you know, do you still think women are getting missed with autism diagnosis? Do you think that's still going on? I mean, I read loads of reports. Oh, you know, yeah, we're better at it now. Or do you think it's still not there?
Mm. So this is a really interesting point. So when my children first got diagnosed, which they were diagnosed on the same day back in 2008, 9,
Yeah,
2009. Um, is that right? 2006, 2007, 2008. Yeah, 2009. Um, both assigned female at birth. I began to realize that this would be this was a really unusual thing. And for my younger child, who was 3 at the time, 2 to 3, they were very more obviously autistic. So they were sometimes elected to not speak. Um, and they would speak about themselves in the third person, and they would wear all their clothes off the shoulder, and then they would love undoing people's buttons and doing them up, and then love lining stuff up. The one that was slightly older, who was 7, um, was very different to that, was very bright, sat in the back of the class and disappeared.
right.
And
Okay.
that really under the radar. And so I because of the people I can't even remember how I met. I think I just did an event at something just because of, thank God for Fame Academy. I did an event somewhere, and someone who was one of the big movers and shakers in the neurodivergent world heard me speak and said, "Let's meet up for coffee. What's on your heart?" And I said, "Girls and autism is on my heart. That's like,
Wow.
why are girls not getting diagnosed? What's going on?" So this lady, Jane Friswell, she was amazing. She put me together, and she together as well. There was a few of us. There was a panel of about 13 of us, got together all these amazing educators, medical, scientific people, and me as a parent, um, got together and met regularly to talk about girls and autism. At this point, 1 in 10 autism diagnoses would be a girl.
Wow.
Now we knew back then it was far greater, but
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
just wasn't being covered. And so for maybe 8 years we met, we wrote a book together. We wrote a little leaflet that went round. It was called Flying Under the Radar, and it went round to every GP in the country. Then the World Health Organization started using it. And that one little leaflet that we collaborated on and wrote together began to change things. It began to tip things. The National Autistic Society were involved with this. We had all kinds of people involved, as well as people from the big colleges, university colleges. And then we wrote a book together. So following on from the leaflet, the book came. And bit by bit, things began to change. It's only recently, and when I say recently, I mean like in the last 6 or 7 years, that we've really seen this massive jump in women being diagnosed. Before that, it was hardly known. And I don't know what the figures are now, but I'd be very interested to see them, because I know at one point, I think it
Yeah.
was 1 in 4 or something rather than 1 in
Yeah.
10. I think we
Yeah,
may
that's right.
even be towards 50-50 at this point. And I think that's
That's
about,
incredible.
again, it's about how science is done, how medicine is
Yeah.
done. So the research is done on white boys, basically. Historically, that's what happens. And so white boys are the people that will come get their diagnosis will happen because they've all been researched on. And other groups don't get a look in. And once those other groups start getting a look in, then you realize actually there's way more people than we realized. And the same's happened with ADHD, of course. And then
Yeah.
and then we get pushback, don't we? Which is like, everybody's got ADHD or autism now,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
which is so ridiculous. Like, hang on a minute. They've had like 2 seconds of a limelight. Let's not take them off the stage yet. They need to stay on that stage and give them a good old 10 years of being in the limelight. Then we can start saying, okay, what's the next thing that we need to look at? But I feel like
Yeah,
there
worries
was a
me.
really
Yeah,
push to shut that down, to shut neurodivergent people down, and to say,
yeah,
what is it, all you people fussing about neurodivergence? Neurodivergence, we need to hear from neurodivergent people. We need
I
to hear
agree.
from them in our education system. We need autistic teachers. We need ADHD head teachers. We need all these people to be there in positions so that the system changes. We're not going to get system change unless you start listening to the neurodivergent people.
Okay, here we go then. Right, you've done this now. You've put yourself right there. So I'm going to give you. Please stop talking. Actually, I'm going to stick on that gorgeous sofa you've got right there. You probably wouldn't allow her through the door, but I've let her in. So tough. Sat next to you right now is Bridget Phillipson. What would you say to her? Give her three pieces of advice from Carrie Grant that you think she needs to hear, because I'd love to know your thoughts on this, actually.
Okay. Well, the most important thing is the children, isn't it? So I could talk about her most recent campaign, but I will skip that because I have other things that are more important to talk about with Bridget Phillipson. And also, we don't know whether Bridget Phillipson will still be in the role that she's in if Andy Burnham gets in. So there is a bit of a question there. But I think whenever we talk about local authority provision and we talk about school provision, I find myself, and this has happened since those very early days of being part of that group that I just mentioned that was looking at girls and autism, we have to look at ideology, because I think that ideology is where things start. And having studied theology, I now look at the world, and I was even before this, but looking at the world in like, whose voices is it that we're hearing? And until we change the ideology that's out there currently, which is the ideology of normal, unless that flips and there is somehow a more even ground and equal ground, then it's going to be hard work. It's a bit like giving me a whole list of things to do that I'm not capable of doing, or changing my heart and saying
Yeah,
to my heart, do you know what it would be like to love someone and serve them and be gorgeous to them? If you're speaking to the love of my heart, I can do, like, as David's wife, I've been married nearly 40 years now, 38 years. If David had given me a list of all the things I'm meant to do, I would not have even got married. I wouldn't have made it to the aisle. But love, without any asking me to do anything, just loving me and me loving David, means that I will do lots of things. There's lots and lots of things I do. So that's ideology. Ideology, if it starts from a place of grace and love, is a very different space. At the moment, what we have is the ideology of normal that everybody's trying to keep up with and failing at. We've then, what the DFE thinks is, let's add SATs, because SATs will make it, obviously there's no rigor these days. These kids are not growing up in the way that we grew up. So let's give them some more rules. Let's give them some more exams. And so we pile on top of an already broken system some exams, which further alienates the people who are slightly different. And then we go, what is going wrong? Why can't they do the SATs? It's the teachers. The teachers are failing. The teachers are not doing their job well enough. Then teachers feel really discouraged. And then when the teachers go, hang on a minute, we're doing as much as we can. Then the senior leadership get the finger at them. So then the senior teachers go, you know what it is? It's the parenting. And then we get a whole flurry of stuff online about parenting's terrible. And all of this will keep cycling round in circles until we look at ideology, until we can actually look at a diverse and inclusive way of thinking, then things will change. If we think differently, the behavior changes. Just tell me behavior changes, nothing will change. Change my ideology, and then stuff changes. So Bridget Phillipson, sorry, this is a really long way to get into point number one. Bridget Phillipson needs to think about what is the ethos of education and who are we educating? Do we love these kids? Do we really want them to succeed? What do we want for these incredibly gifted humans who have all of this stuff inside them stored up, ready for use, ready to find a purposeful future? What are we giving them that helps them to release that?
Yeah.
And until we can answer that question, we really can't get onto what should a school system look like. So that's the first one, is the ideology. I think the second framework is like, how do we create, how do we spend the money in the right way? I think that that's a really big question. I think that there's been a massive criticism of SEND schools, that children are not fitting into mainstream. They end up going to a SEND school, and that SEND school is a private school and therefore being paid 60 grand for the year by the local authority. And then the local authority goes bankrupt because they can't afford the schools. I get why they're moaning about that. But at the same time, where is the building of our public schools? Where is the building of SEND schools? Why is it the private sector that's building all of these schools? Because who pays for those schools is actually the local authority. The government end up paying for it. It's the same as our NHS. You keep
Yeah.
offshooting a little bit more to private services, and eventually the actual system itself breaks.
Totally.
So this
Yeah.
is what's happening in our education system. And so we've got to invest in new schools, and schools that work for everyone, not just your neurotypical students. Neurotypical students will always flourish. They'll always be fine. They'll
Oh,
be okay.
100%.
No threat to
Yeah.
the neurotypical students. The threat is to those who are different. The threat is to those who, in one way or another, are marginalized. And that covers a whole load of different things, not just neurodivergence. It
No,
covers
no, you're
social,
so right.
class, economics, and culture, and all of those things. But if you think about the rich resources, if you looked at it on a resource basis, if you look at the children going into school at 4 and 5 years old, and all that they hold culturally, all that they hold in their brains, all that they hold creatively, my goodness, the world would be a different place if we actually worked out how do we get the best out of children and take
Yeah.
education from that point. And so building schools that work for everyone. If they don't work for everyone, then we need to build another type of school. It's not going to work just shoehorning neurodivergent people into neurotypical spaces. It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work.
Mm.
Our children, in my case, end up on suicide watch, or my child ends up out of school for 3 years, another child, or another
Yeah.
child who hasn't been to school for is 16, not been to school since the age of 12. So
Hear this so often, it's heartbreaking.
oh yeah, and this is like normal in my house. Like it's not even like one child, it's like 3 children. So,
Yeah.
and this is coming from parents who, like David and I, are so on it in terms of be educated, we were really strict parents. We then had to jump ship from the way of thinking that we had, but we were like definitely, quite pushy parents, and in terms of our children and wanting them to do well. And then
Yeah.
we entered the system that was so broken, that broke our children. And then you have to push back. You've got no option but to push back. So,
No.
Bridget Phillipson, we need schools that are built by your government, not built by private companies. And we need for those schools to work for these different children, not
Yeah.
just as a bolt-on on a mainstream school, but as standalone schools. I have to say, once one of my children was out of school for 3 years, and as a parent, you end up being teacher, you're still being parent, you're a teacher, therapist, best friend,
Scriber,
entire
reader.
network, you're everything. Um,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
they will never get back those 3 years that they were out of school, but they ended up in an autism school that transformed them. From 14 to 19, they were there, and it was truly amazing. They're now in a mainstream college. So I think that having those years in an autism school was so healing, so amazing, so wonderful. And I wish that had been there for the older child who really struggled. So
That's interesting. So it just
I want,
shows by nurturing, the end
yeah,
result is different. So imagine
no,
if that nurturing wasn't there for your children, where would we be now, do you think? And this is what I keep coming back to. This is what I worry. The same as you, I hear, families reach out to me the same as they do to you, no doubt. And as parents, you spend your lives, don't you, trying to protect children. I'm doing it to my eldest at the moment. He does online schooling. He's given the ability to use accessible tools. And then we go on an exam call the other day to be told, oh, unfortunately, we don't have this technology in the exam situation. So it's invigilated and he's going to have to use paper and pen. And I'm like, well, what was the point of you giving him all that technology to boost his confidence, get him where he needs to be? It worries me. It worries me what is going to happen. And I agree with you. I love the whole, what you were talking about, love and everything like that really touched me actually. But if somebody was to look at this, weird way of looking at it, someone put rose tinted lenses on and looked at this just for a day and thought to themselves in a horrible way, so what's the return on investment? If I was to do something different right now, and you take your children, and I was to do this long term, and I know that the mainstream children are going to be fine. We don't need to worry about them. They'll survive. They
Yeah.
are good. They're
Yeah.
academic. They'll do well. But what are we going to get out of these neurodiverse kids by doing something different? Are we going to make more millionaires? Are we going to make more businesses? Are we going to find a cure for diseases because these kids have this wonderful brains that we can just nurture? I think if somebody did that, they'd be surprised the results they got. But hey, what a wonderful world that would be, right?
Yeah, and I think that, there does seem to be, I mean, we could talk about plotting, but there does seem to be, when you start taking the arts out of school, when you want STEM rather than STEAM, there are all the signs that the creative people, which are largely the neurodivergent people, let's not provide for them. Let's just take out the A. The A is probably the thing that's keeping those kids alive right now.
Oh,
But also,
absolutely.
not only this, if we don't invest in our children now, these are the kids that will be on benefits later. They're going to cost you more in the long run if they don't get an education.
Yeah.
So it's,
Juvenile system as well. Some dyslexics is a really interesting thing that came out not so long ago about how many dyslexic and ADHD young men end up in the juvenile system and then end up reoffending and end up in prison because they can't get a job because there's no, the kind of jobs that I would have got, like, working down the mines, working in a garage, mending a car, lower skilled jobs. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what we did because that's all we thought we were worthy of. You're dead right. You're dead right. It's really worrying. I don't know. I don't know whether there's. I hate to say this, but I think people will be talking about this on podcasts 20 years time, having the same conversation that you and I are having right now, talking about exactly the same thing, unfortunately. But all we can do is talk about it, right?
I do think that also back in our school days, there was like, there were children, like most of us didn't go to university where I was. Like there were a couple of kids would go to uni, but most didn't even go to uni. They went and got jobs or they started apprenticeships. But like no one looked down on someone because they had an apprenticeship. Apprenticeships were seen as like something really amazing. Like, oh, my parents both
Absolutely.
did apprenticeships. Like that's what you did. That was your way of learning. And I think for neurodivergent people, that was a real way in during those years where maybe you're taking that longer trajectory of learning. Apprenticeships are amazing. Why have we gotten rid of that? And not only that, but these are wonderful ways of earning. They're
Yeah.
builders, roofers. Those people are like incredible in
Yeah,
terms of,
totally. So I'm
uh,
laughing because you've just made me think of something. So I'm going to say this because my son always listens to these podcasts. My first, so after my years of dressing up as Adam and the Ant, my first job at the age of, I would have been 15 after school. So 3 nights a week was sweeping the sawdust up on a floor in a butcher's. And then I was on, what was it called? Was it the YTS scheme?
yeah,
And I
right. Yeah.
think I earned £12 a week, maybe. And that was year 2, I think. But they taught me how to be a butcher. And it was a
Right.
skilled
You
job.
learn a trade.
Exactly.
And you learn,
So,
why were you learning a trade? You're learning how to be with adults. You're learning
yes.
how to work with the public when they walk in. You might be learning the till. There's so many skills that you're learning that school will not teach you. So there's a magic in that I think that we've just lost.
Yeah, no, totally. It is. I I agree, and I've asked this question to other people before. I'm kind of going to ask it to you. I worry. What worries me the most is how many children still sit in that classroom today. Like you mentioned, your eldest, I think you said, sat at the back and disappeared. How many still are doing that now today as we speak? How many? You know,
Absolutely
it's
loads.
worrying. Yeah,
And
no, totally.
that worrying. I do think also there is, and I think about this for my child who's 31. When they were at school, parents were allowed in and to the classroom, and so it wasn't just a teacher and a TA. There were like three other parents there was one mum that was there like every single day. She was always in the school. But I would go in and I'd teach like sewing, all the things that I do, reading with the kids. I think if you include parents, and that would be my third question really, or comment to Bridget Phillipson, would be around co-production with parents. Quite often parents hold magic and we're not even using that free resource that is sitting there whilst a parent can't work because their school are going to call them every 10 minutes saying, pick up your child. So it kind of kills any ability to work. You're like sitting there. You could be doing amazing stuff in that school. You
Yeah,
just need to we just need to make sure everyone's safe to go into school, of course. But if you've got all the DBS stuff going, why can't parents be in there? Why are we saying it's only a teacher and a TA? When my 30-year-old was 7, 8, 9, 10, there were parents in the class every single day. Parents that were there every day doing stuff, helping at
there's
all
a
the
few
little
kids in
things
a class.
on.
It's
It
and
wasn't just
yeah, no,
it wasn't just down to one TA to work out. If you've got 20% of children are now considered to be neurodivergent in a class. So in a
yeah,
class of 30 kids, you're going to have 6 of them are going to be, needing that extra help. How is one TA meant to help 6 children? They can't. But if
no
you've got
chance.
3 or 4 parents, those parents can, and those parents add something to the community. They build the village. They help those kids to feel like there's more adults that I don't relate to this one, but I do relate to that one. So it's just so helpful. So for me, co-production, this is why the time that we're doing this podcast is right on the button for when a whistleblower came forward and talked about the local authority laughing at not providing care for children, send children. And all of and it's so, what's really interesting is that on my feed today, there are, I don't know how many hundreds of comments, there's a lot of comments, but
I've seen it.
parents from all over the country going, that must be my local authority. What does that tell you? Everyone's claiming as theirs because we
Yeah,
all know this is how we're treated as parents. Parents and carers treated despicably, treated with
yeah,
absolute disdain. When we could be co-producing amazing pieces of work, we could be doing stuff with the kids. We've all got skills that we can bring into the classroom. I think that is an absolute loss because that would build society as well. If you've got parents, we could learn about all different cultures. There's all kinds of stuff that we can learn about if
yeah.
parents were allowed into the class.
No, no, I agree. You're right. I don't disagree with everything. And I saw your post this morning, and yeah, I actually thought it was Milo Council of Ross. There you go. I didn't comment on it, but it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
it's a broken system. It's old. It's dated, and it probably served the purpose when it was developed years and years and years ago, and it was probably right then. But our minds and our bodies are so in tune with technology and so in tune with what's going on at any millisecond that our lives have changed because of technology. And
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. But I loved your first bit about love, and I think that you know, for me, like this has been a really interesting podcast for me because I know that you know I've read parts of your book and like like the stuff you put out there. Anyone that's listening to this, if you don't follow Carrie, follow her on Instagram because the stuff that you say on there is beautifully put. I saw that you put a bit on there about how to do an ECHP form and this, that, and the other. It's kind of stuff that all the parents that listen to this podcast should know. But um, I hope that if you and I just help one person that listens to this today, then that's made me feel better. But I just don't think there's enough awareness about what goes on in those classrooms. And I'm not blaming teachers because teachers have got an impossible job. You know, you've mentioned that. Um, it is a spin cycle in a washing machine, basically. It's rinse and repeat. And I don't know how we change that, but it does need changing because I fear in 10 or 15 years time, probably, you know, not my little list, but maybe my eldest is child. I worry what schools are going to be like then. I really do. If something isn't changed now, you know, that's what
And
concerns me the most.
it will change when, I suppose, it begins to affect the neurotypical families. You know, that's the thing with being in the margins, is that it doesn't change until someone in the center says, hey, this is wrong. And once the people in the center start talking about it, once they start feeling it, then we'll probably see a bit of change. But one thing I do want to say to people listening, you know, if you are that send parent carer and you are really struggling, and goodness knows we've been through so much, is to remember to climb out of your child's skin. I think sometimes we climb into our child just to empathize with what is it, how does the world look from their point of view, and how do I advocate for them? How do I help them to find agency? How do I fight the systems? And sometimes we get stuck there. And it's
Yeah,
important to remember to step back out again, to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hello, I'm Carrie. Hello, whatever your name is. You know, to remember who you are and remember that you have a life that is separate to all of that trauma that is going on with your
yeah.
child. You still
It
have
can
your
drag you
own.
down.
So it
It's
really can.
sapping, right? It's
Have got
sapping.
yourself, find a village that loves on you, that listens to you, that has hope for you. You know, we really need to keep ourselves healthy. It's really,
Yeah.
that bit really important.
No, totally. And again, you touched on something there. I mean, the amount of parents that get broken because this. You said, you know, you stop becoming mum and dad. You start becoming, you
Or
know, a
she.
reader, a scriber, a writer, all is a legal aid, a TA, you know, and all of a sudden you start. You know, if you've got a job, you start, I don't know, because even with me, my experience, I work in accessible tools and accessible education. And even me, with my eldest, it's hit me. You know, it's hit me really hard because I know these companies and I'm reaching out to these companies directly. Now,
Hmm.
that's because I know who they are and I know where they are in the system. And then I took a step back and I was thinking to myself, on that call that I was on when we went through this exam call, I think there was 164 other people on this Teams call. Obviously, no cameras on, no microphones, right? So these are all parents. And we know that it's around, they say between 13 and 17% of a classroom is neurodivergent. They've been put in that system that was never designed for them. So I was quickly doing the maths in my head, thinking, right, that's how many people, parents are on this call, and it's probably mum or dad, maybe, and they're on all both on one camera or one laptop. I was sitting there thinking, how many other people is this starting to affect? So I clicked on the right hand side on the chat button, and you know what? Everything that I was thinking was being put in that chat.
People
Why
were,
is there no? Yeah. Why isn't this available? Why is this not happening? Why is this accommodation not being made? And
wow.
then what happens as soon as they end the call? They go, oh, yeah, we're trying to make the changes. You know, technology moves fast. We're not sure when it'll be available. The call ends. And then what happens? They sat there exactly the same as me thinking, excuse my French, holy shit, I've got to go and sit and tell my son now that everything he's done for the last 4.5 years, he can't do anymore. And that that is what parents we go through, right? It's that crushing
Yeah.
defeat of being able to tell your child, how do you tell them there's a possibility here you're going to struggle in your exams
Yeah.
because the technology isn't there to help you?
And
it's
then those
heartbreaking.
it's everything though, Jay. It's everything from exams to our children who are in therapeutic placements that for one
Yeah,
reason or another might not be living in the home. And then they're moved to, I'm in London, let's just say they're moved to Scotland or they're moved
yeah,
to Wales or they moved to some other area that, you just think, why is there not just somewhere close to home where the relationship with the family can remain intact? Why is it that parents like mental health placements,
yeah,
dole's orders, all the things, the other bits, the critical stuff that's going on that's also a part of many of our parents and carers' lives, even in those areas, it's like it feels heartless. It's heartless.
yeah,
You talk about your child has learned in this way, has flourished in this way, has somehow found access, and now the very thing that has been the game changer for your child, they're going to take away.
yeah. Because the
Oh, this is cruelty.
system's not ready for them. So why offer it in the first place? You know, and you know, look, I tried, and don't get me wrong, financially, we're not well off by any stretch of the imagination, and at times it's nearly broke us, paying a monthly fee to put my son through this, because I knew straight away. And you just do, that the school system was not going to fit him. I needed to do something different. So we tried. So this school has charged us an obscene amount of money every month to do something which now you're just gonna break him. You're gonna snap him in two. And I just think,
Not only that,
anyway.
but you're the one that's got to deliver that piece of news.
Yeah, as a parent, and that's the heartbreaking thing. But I love what you said, and yeah, listen, I totally agree with what Carrie said. Find a village, find a community. You can reach. I'm going to put Carrie's details in the bottom of the chat, on the podcast. Drop me a message, join Carrie's Instagram and ping her some messages. Do whatever you need to do to give yourself. You need to give yourself as a parent 5 minutes, because otherwise, not only will your child be breaking that terrible news, you'll break yourself as well. And I don't want anyone to feel like that, because it's horrible. Right, before I ask you my final question, I'm going to do something I've not done before, right? You cannot think, you've just got to answer. Ready? Tea or coffee? Favorite singer of all time? Ooh, one song everyone should hear. That's the clip. That's the clip. That is one book that every parent should read, Carrie. Come on. Beautiful book. Totally. No, you did, totally. And I want them to. One book that every teacher should read. One word your children, yeah, one word your children would use to describe you. Boss. One word you describe yourself. Okay. Right. So, last question for you. Um, the podcast is called Thick No More because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make people realize that, yeah, we're given labels. Your children are given labels. Unfortunately, we're put in a box which is never designed for us, right? So take your time. What does the words thick no more mean to you, Carrie? Yeah, there's the light for you, right? Listen, Carrie, I can't honestly thank you enough. You are a wonderful, wonderful human being. You're an amazing member of this community. I can't thank you enough. Not only for joining me, but I mean, for the compassion, honesty, courage you've got, that you've shown throughout your career, and shown even more so. You show up every day for everybody. And I think you mentioned your book there. You shared that openly, your family, and I think that will help loads more people if they read it, that listen to this as well. So thank you so much. Um, Guys, listen, the only way that I can help you is by you helping me. And shamelessly, all I want you to do is just click follow, because the more of you that follow, the more this gets to people, right? So if this is any part of this has resonated or touched you, just click that follow button, and that means more people will get to listen to it. I really want to spread the word. I want to help more people. Carrie, honestly, thank you so much from my heart. You're an amazing individual. Love you to bits. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And when it's time for bed, don't forget to say it's time for bed.